Hey, well, what's up, Colliders? Welcome back to the Collision Live. Daniel here, joined at the desk by the fireworks to my 4th of July, Mr. Sam David Camp, sporting his snazzy new haircut. What's up?
Oh yes, got the ears lowered, as my grandfather used to say.
So we hope you guys had a great 4th of July celebration. Got to see some fireworks. Got to eat some hot dogs, hamburgers, all that fun stuff. We're excited to be back talking about pop culture like we do every week, every Tuesday, just sort of approaching what's going on in pop culture through the lens of a Christian worldview and how can Christians engage with it, talk about it, contribute to it, be just aware of it, guard ourselves from it, and just all that jungle that we get every week at Pop Culture. A couple kind of interesting stuff for us to talk about this week, just based on various things that are going on. But I encourage you guys, if you guys are watching live, let us know your thoughts, comments, share any of that. Even if you're watching this video after we've been live, we're no longer live, go ahead and share your thoughts anyways, and we'll love to dialogue with you in the comment section about that. So the first thing I thought we'd talk about this week is, again, kind of another one of those Collision 101 basic kind of foundational things, and that's just kind of finding Christian themes in movies. I guess more specifically in kind of like Hollywood, secular, non kind of faith-based films. Yeah. Obviously, they're not hard to find in some of those movies. But how do you do that? Should we do that? Is it kind of disingenuous to do that? And some of my thinking behind this is even just with with Luca, we talked about that last week. There's a lot of the secular kind of culture reading into that movie. A lot of kind of, like a gay allegory and LGBTQ Pride Month kind of stuff. And the whole discussion about that. And we kind of dialogued a bit about some of the dangers in that, why there's some issues with that. And so kind of the other side of that is, but as Christians, we do that. And at the Collision, we do that all the time. Yeah. Looking at, even some of the comments we sometimes get on our YouTube channel reviews, or kind of question how we would attribute Christian themes or messages or lessons from films that otherwise are obviously not made by believers. They're not teaching biblical truth. So I thought we'd just sort of walk through that a bit. Is how do you do that? Should we do that? Any of this sort of...
Yeah, well, no. I mean, I think there's, because I feel like so much of the Bible is just about humanity, and there's just deep, deep truths about who we are as people, then inevitably that's going to come up. If you're a good storyteller, there's going to be some biblical themes, I think, come out of those stories, and I think it can be super helpful, because we talked about this some with Karen Swallow Pryor's book on reading well, just about how stories and for her case, books sort of form you, and I think the same can be said for movies, and we've said this before, but movies and TV and books and these kind of things have a way of forming us, and I think it's important to see and use those things, I think, in a way that can maybe help complete our understanding of not only of Scripture, but of ourselves. Not to say that it's like informing how we read Scripture, but I think it's helpful to see biblical themes in movies, even if they're not like Bible movies or Christian-made movies. I think it can be really helpful to kind of see a particular element, say redemption or courage or any of these traits that are good to have. I think it's important to see that in film, and I think it can inform us and help shape us as believers. And I don't think it doesn't have to be that like a Christian made this so that I can feel better about it. Like, that doesn't have to happen.
Yeah, and it's not trying to say this is this is a Christian film, and you have to sort of like from the other extreme, kind of with Luca, where this isn't just an interpretation, this is the interpretation. Right. But I do think it's somewhat of a fallacy that Christians, sort of this idea that Christians can only affirm something that is this a whole 100% made by by a Christian. The whole agenda and message very purposefully Christian. Like some of that, that you have to affirm Christian art, not just sort of the message, is I think kind of a fallacy. I think of Augustine, and then the Reformers kind of took the motto later, but sort of the idea that all truth is God's truth. that we're all, even unbelievers, are made in the image of God. We're all,
Right.
our creativity comes from God. The world that we live in and we're telling stories in was created by God. So whether or not we're kind of using art to worship or God or blaspheme or that, inevitably there's going to be traces of God in films. And I think kind of too, as I was thinking through some of this, two kind of verses on opposite sides uh, of the aisle for this. One is we've talked about it lots of weeks, so we won't get too into it. But Paul in Acts 17, where he's taking these pagan Greek poems and saying, "Hey, no, this is sort of your half truth. These were about Zeus, but I'm going to tell you that it actually kind of relates to God, and here's the rest of the story." So kind of like a Christian finding kind of Christian themes and truth in unbelieving art. And then the other side of it is Solomon's temple. When he's going to build the temple, he actually calls in and you have kind of one of the greatest works of Christian art. Architecture was built by unbelievers, but didn't mean that what they built wasn't used to honor God or point people towards God. And maybe that's the last verse, then we can kind of dialogue about it. But this Philippians 4:8, where Paul is writing, says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." And it's one of the most famous, kind of beloved verses. But what he's not saying is, whatever is religious, whatever is Christian, think about that. He's just saying, hey, if you as you're kind of living your life, going through life, looking at the world, relationships, whatever it is, art. If there's anything good, if there's anything excellent, affirm that. It doesn't mean you have to take holistic everything, the packaging. So what would that kind of mentality mean for us then? Or just as Christians watching movies or?
Well, I think it means that you can get behind certain messages in movies. And so like most recently I just watched the Tomorrow War and we'll probably talk more about this in the next alien invasion segment.
Oh yeah.
There's a theme in there about sort of seeing a path you're going down and choosing to be better than that. So you're sort of faced with your shortcomings and you have the strength to overcome that. And like just because that is a potential way for you to go, like the character chooses not to do that and faced with their own shortcomings. And so stuff like that, I mean, you can say, well, that's a great message to say that you're not destined to just do what your dad did or do just do this because that's the kind of person that you are. Like, no, you can rise above those maybe natural instincts that you have to do wrong or to fall short or whatever that may be, and you can be a better person than that. And so I think seeing stuff like that in film, I think that's 100% something you can get behind. Anytime you see that in movies, and if it's a supporting strong families or being courageous in the face of adversity, like those are things that you can definitely get behind and show your support for it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is too is like we do that in every other area of culture, like science or history or politics. You might support a politician that stands for a lot of Christian values, even if they're themselves not a believer. Science, a lot of medicine, and some you can affirm the good in that, even if they're not.
This wasn't Christian medicine.
Yeah, they don't believe in create. Maybe they believe in evolution, but they discovered something that we can affirm as a good discovery. And this sort of this idea that Christians can affirm good, and that non-Christians can come up with good ideas and good. They won't, of course, have the whole truth. That's sort of like Paul's thing. Like, hey, you didn't get all the way there, but that doesn't mean as Christians that know the full truth that we can't affirm the good themes, and that's not imposing on the art or like being disingenuous with it. It's just
or like taking ownership of it and saying this is the only way that you can view this art, like some are doing with like Luca, but just saying no, this is like we can support this idea or these themes in this movie, and we do it in other ways. And I think the thing to remember too is that like non-believers are not like the enemy, and I think oftentimes folks in the church can kind of see Hollywood and pop culture and all this is sort of that's the enemy. Like we have to stay away from that, and it's not true. I mean, because it's people who are creating this artwork, and some of it's really good, some of it's not. That doesn't mean you have to accept all of it or reject all of it, but it means you can be discerning and say, okay, well, I really like what this person is saying, and that's a message that I think can be very helpful to people in a day like today. Like let's support that. Let's go watch that or tell friends about it. And it not necessarily have to be like, well, since they're not of orthodoxy, then we have to shun it or make our own worse version of it.
And I think maybe, and then we'll move on to the next section. But maybe kind of an example of this is with Raya and the Last Dragon. Like I know even some of the comments we got from that, like on our YouTube, kind of pushing back. How can you affirm Christian truth when it this is a magical world of dragons? That's not a biblical worldview. We need to just reject it. That's evil. And kind of even in the review of that I did, it's it's recognizing where it's not biblical, where hey, this isn't the worldview. Ultimately at the end of that movie, it kind of falls down the trap of like salvation, and if we just sort of come together, we can overcome. And
you just believe in yourself.
Yeah, obviously, this kind of self-empowerment. That's not a Christian. That's not the gospel message by any means. But within the story, we kind of broke down, and I had some discussions with other some of the comments and stuff. Just hey, there's some powerful imagery that if you're looking at it through a Christian lens, can be powerful. You don't need to accept the self-empowerment at the end, but some of the like sin and self-sacrifice and all that kind of stuff is there's benefit to that, even if the film isn't going to be showing at a VBS or something. It's not like a Christian film,
right?
But yeah, it's just sort of it's affirming the good and kind of bringing the truth with us as we approach it, and kind of weeding through. And I think there is value to that. I think we are missing out on a lot of good messages and inspiration and stuff if we limit ourselves to only that made by believers, that is about the faith, marketed to believers. There's a lot of good in cinema and books and in art in general for us as Christians if we just approach it kind of thinking a little more critically about it. But moving on to some of the stuff going on, we have pop culture news. So not a whole lot. It's the July 4th weekend, so not a whole lot of stuff happening this week.
Fireworks.
Yeah, everyone was too busy shooting off fireworks to have pop culture news. But a couple of things that kind of stood out to me going on. Richard Donner, who directed Superman, like the original Superman, and The Goonies, died, 91. Just natural death, but really set in a lot of ways the template for the superhero genre with his first Superman movie. Bill Cosby back in the news, unfortunately released for jail. Just the big, all the discussion that goes around that. But just kind of another reminder that the images we see in culture and some of the appearance isn't always the truth. Everything is kind of through the lens of PR. MCU, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever started production. Obviously, it's going to be an anticipated film because the first one was great, but also just we don't have Black Panther. Seeing what they're doing with that. Again, I think we had.
It's fascinating to see what they do with that story.
Yeah, I think one of our first Collision Live episodes was right when Chadwick Boseman died, and we said if they can just focus it on the culture. There's so much cool there. So I hope they give us credit for that idea, which I'm sure was not original. Black Widow is coming to theaters this Friday. And there's been a lull in MCU movies thanks to COVID, so that's getting back on track.
Yeah.
And then in the category of just bizarre cinema, who says Hollywood is out of ideas? Two things. Jerry Seinfeld is starring and directing in a movie about the invention of the Pop-Tart.
I'll sign up for that.
So looking forward to that. And then I don't know if you saw the trailer for Pig.
I did not see it, but I just saw the poster.
So this
and
is.
I thought Nicolas Cage.
This is Nicolas Cage, and he has a pig that he loves. The pig gets stolen. He's looking for this pig, and it doesn't get much better than hearing Nicolas Cage. I'm looking for my truffle pig, like that. So any of that stuff stand out? Obviously,
Nicolas Cage and a pet pig. That definitely stands out. Yeah. That in all seriousness, I'm definitely gonna see that movie probably.
It's a bizarre. Like I have no idea what the movie's about. and it plays itself seriously, and it's almost like a horror movie. I think it's rated R, and but it's some of those like right when you feel the tension, it's just I love that pig or something, and it's this Nicolas Cage, and no one can take him seriously these days.
Well, yeah, he's such an interesting character too. So like, I don't know. I just feel like if he's in something now, like I don't know, that's just really intriguing to me.
Yeah, he's become this like he's just like an icon. Like
yeah,
he's sort of a joke, but not. But he's won an Academy Award. Like he's not.
like he's not a lousy by any means, but he's just an odd guy, I think. And
he's sort of in like the Brendan Fraser category of they're just
which
like.
I think Brendan Fraser was recently in No Time.
He's making his comeback.
The name of it, but he's in something on HBO Max, I think, right now with like tons of stars. Like I think, can't remember who else, but
yeah. So some of those.
Lots of folks.
Again, I don't know if we will be doing a collision review on Pig, but maybe we will have to.
Yeah, I think then we probably have to do that.
But yeah, it does seem like although this was a slow week, that pop culture stuff is really starting to pick up more as some of the COVID stuff dies down. Our next thing, based on Sam kind of previewed it a little bit, with the Tomorrow War dropping on Amazon Prime Video, just thought we'd talk about alien invasion movies.
What better genre?
Why not? We were not going to miss an opportunity to talk about alien invasion movies. You guys know I love me a good alien invasion movie. I love aliens. The movie Alien is one of the few 10 out of 10 perfect movies. This the whole genre to me I love. And it kind of overlaps a bit with like kind of the monster movies and stuff that I just kind of eat up. But this is kind of thought it's being a staple for like forever. Like if you look at like the first movies that were made, there's these like really hokey, colorless invasion movies. Like a lot of these classic first
like Mars Attacks was that.
Yeah, I
wonder way back. Like it's been redone, I think, since.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of these.
But even that was a radio. What was that radio program?
Yeah, like War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Which is the sort of one of the famous where it's tricked a bunch of people into thinking that it was real, it was really happening. But just I thought just list a couple of the great ones, and we can just sort of talk. Why is that? Why do we care? Why do people love invasion movies? What is the appeal of that? And I guess this kind of what as Christians. What value is there in these sort of films, and what can we learn? But a couple of my favorites that I was looking at, some more recent ones, Cloverfield, and the sequel wasn't as alien-centric. Edge of Tomorrow, starring Tom Cruise, District 9, Signs with Mel Gibson, Arrival, War of the Worlds, Independence Day, A Quiet Place 1 and 2. And it's interesting because I was thinking of those films. Yeah. Those are very different films. Like I think there's sort of the real spoofy kind. There's the real serious, like real intellectual. Like there's this the like shooting up alien kind. Like there's thriller. Like what is it? Do you have a favorite like invasion movie or?
Those are all. I like all of those. I mean, Arrival is certainly really interesting because I think it's a bit more heady, I guess. And intellectual, but it's just a totally different take on sort of the alien.
I mean, like I quote and use Arrival in my PhD dissertation.
Yeah, well, there you go. Like,
so yeah,
it's well, because there's so many like, I mean, it's the great unknown, right? So you can kind of do whatever you want in this genre. Like, you could have any type of alien sort of invasion movie, and it could go any number of ways. And I think that's what's so endlessly interesting about alien invasion movies, because like what new way can you do an alien invasion, and especially even now, like even in sort of the zeitgeist of the country, especially with all the UAP stuff and unidentified objects that the Navy has been seeing. And so I think there's sort of this fever pitch of like interest, and there's always been interest in sort of the unknown and aliens and other worlds and all that kind of stuff. And so I mean I think it's endlessly fascinating because it's sort of it I think they represent sort of the great unknown like coming to us, and so like there's just so many possibilities.
Yeah, because we talked about when we a couple weeks ago, I guess, when we talked about alien, like real life aliens, and is there aliens out there, and how a lot of our the appeal or the intrigue kind of almost has religious roots of sort of this
Definitely.
natural, just that it's natural for us to believe in something beyond ourselves, and when a lot of the science and stuff in kind of secular culture says you can't have a religion to do that, you keep finding other ways to like more natural, but it's still that same kind of inclination to kind of look, beyond Earth and to a life form. But I think there's, because you're right. I think there's so many ways that, like even just the motivation of are the aliens, in the movies that I listed, like some of them are like benevolent, like good aliens. Some of them are very evil and like trying to take over. Some of them are just kind of like very carnal, and they don't really, that's kind of like the Tomorrow War movie. Like they're not really thinking creatures.
Yeah.
They just, there's animals that just happen to be
And
there.
they prey on flesh.
And they eat. They're hungry. But I think kind of when I was thinking of the sort of the two concepts, because the aliens, they're sort of the unknown, and you can do a whole lot with them. But sort of the constant in all those movies, and obviously it plays out depending on the genre kind of movie you're making, is sort of the two themes of like how people respond in crisis. Like when when there's the unknown happens, when it's sort of powerful, sort of how do we respond? I think the movies, for the most part, almost all play out some level of that, whether it's like individuals or like the country, or does the world get divided, or does the world come together? Like Independence Day under the American flag, how do you do that? And then also I think the aliens often can just serve as like a metaphor, and what they're a metaphor of can depend on the movie, but it's sort of these two things. Like, there's some threat, and usually the aliens kind of represent some kind of metaphorically some real life threat. And then how do people respond? I think there's stuff in there for Christians to think through.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's what makes this genre so, I think, appealing and interesting to people, and especially, I would say, even especially to Christians as well. Like, because it's sort of wide open, and like, it's, you kind of have all of the great like bits and pieces of a good story, like sort of an unknown enemy, a great catastrophe, the need for leadership to, become a better version of yourself, to rise to the occasion. All these things, I think, are there in most of the alien movies to sort of, okay, well, are you going to just be a coward and try and run and hide, or are you going to stand and fight? And how do you handle this incoming alien? Do you what do you do with that? So I think it's just really interesting how you can just sort of make those stories, and it ultimately comes back to humanity, right? Like it's always like, okay, so what is humanity going to do? What are the individual characters in the movie going to do? Are they going to be able to overcome whatever their differences is, both within the group and then sort of fighting the external forces that are coming in?
And that's I love all the good ones. I love all alien. My favorite kind of sub group of those are always the more like isolated, like Signs. I think that's why A Quiet Place. Yeah. Why I love those movies so much. And even I guess it's not an invasion movie. Alien. We go to space to find that one. But the idea of like even like actually the Steven Spielberg's World of Worlds. I'm not crazy about that movie. But one of the cool things in that movie is you don't really get the news reports where it's just the global scale. It's characters, and you kind of get bits of pieces of what's going on. Like Signs is the same way, little clips, but really it's just about kind of a character or a family, and how do you kind of navigate your family through when there's all this sort of fear out there, and you don't really know what's going on. And to me, those are the better, like, when it just becomes sort of it's just kind of faceless armies shooting missiles, and it's this kind of spectacle. Not as crazy about that.
Yeah, that just doesn't hold your attention, I don't think, for very long, when it's like, and this country marshals more troops and like massive amounts of like battleships, and it's like, okay, well, it's hard to connect to that, I think. And then so I think the good ones just zero in on a person or a family, and that's so much more interesting. And I think you can hold your attention for so much longer than just sort of like giant battle scene.
Yeah, it very
For the
much
world,
is.
like
It very much is kind of dependent on, which is what I say about like monster movies too. Is like what makes a good monster or alien movie is the humans,
right,
and I think sort of what divides the good and the bad is when you focus too much on just the spectacle and the CG alien or monsters, and you kind of lose the human drama. I think that's is
right,
the entry point for people, and I think as Christians, as to how do we respond in crisis. How would we, as people, as just the church, kind of navigate through this sort of fear or obsessed or clouded situation. And so yeah, I think there is a lot. There's a lot in monster
yeah,
movies and alien movies. You can never have too many. I think there's I know there's a couple other alien things coming up soon. There is Alien, the TV show. I forgot to put that in pop culture news. They are making a TV show, and it's getting a lot of weird buzz lately based on some comments made by the showrunner where he's like, well, it's not really about aliens, it's about us and inequality, and people are like, maybe that's
but
going
it's
too
called
far.
Aliens?
Yeah, maybe that's going
Yeah.
too far that way, where you still need aliens. You can't just have the human drama. But let us know your favorite alien movies. I know there's a couple that I haven't seen that I need to, like The Day the Earth Stood Still or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I don't know why I've never seen that
Yeah, I
movie.
don't think I have either.
I've seen most Spielberg movies, but
The X Files.
X Files is
Not a movie, but
well, there is two or three movies.
oh, that's true.
But let us know, what are your favorite alien invasion movies, and how would you do
And
personally?
why are they all not as good as Alien?
Yeah, an Alien is a standard. So this week at the Collision, a couple of things for you guys to keep your eye open for. I released an article last week, end of last week, resisting Hollywood's sexual gospel. A little more meaty, maybe serious article, but kind of again based on a lot of the Luca discussion and
Yeah.
just how as Christians what do we do in our cultures this intent to make absolutely everything about sex and especially children, children's entertainment, and what sort of the alternative that Christians can have to that. And then the Tomorrow War, we did a review. We didn't do a written review for that movie, but we did do a video review. So if you guys are watching on Facebook, head over to the YouTube channel. If you're already on the YouTube channel, then stay there and check out the review and let us know your thoughts. Again, we thought it was a good movie, maybe not a great movie,
Yeah,
but
had some great parts, good potential, but I think ultimately had
and has our boy Chris Pratt, and that's
mediocre.
definitely that is definitely
Sprinkled
a
throughout.
bonus, yeah.
Yeah.
And J.K. Simmons. But any
Yeah.
final thoughts for us for this week?
No, I think that about does it. I'm just looking forward to the Olympics and
Oh yeah.
following on Tour de France and Wimbledon, all the fun stuff happening on that side of the world.
Yeah, and probably next week when we come back, we'll have seen, or at least I will have seen Black Widow, and probably have a review up for that. So keep your eyes open for that. Probably drop the review on Friday. So we'll be curious to talk about that with you guys. But thanks for joining us again. Hope you guys will join us next week. Every Tuesday at noon is Talk About Pop Culture. Share your thoughts. Come join us as we sort of discuss some of these fun, crazy issues. But have a great week, guys, and continue to collide through the world for Christ.